Howdy folks, welcome back to World of Tanks with a mighty Jingles. Before I crack on with today's garage review, I just wanted to keep you guys informed as to what sort of thing you can expect to see on my channel in the future. Now, you guys have been putting up with an advert at the start of every video for quite a while now, and I've been using the proceeds from that to buy premium vehicles that I wouldn't normally be interested in getting, like the Yak Tiger 88 on the Super Pershing, for example. To review those for you guys so you can decide whether or not, based on what you see in the review that I do, whether or not you think these vehicles are worth spending your own money on. And continuing that, coming up soon, we're going to be doing a review of this beast here, the T34. I'm also going to get my hands on an IS6, review that one for you, even though I said I would never buy one. and yes, an FCM 50 as well. So that's the sort of thing coming up in the future. Also, you can expect to see some reviews of some of the new little kids on the block. Here we go, the Panzer 2G, which is amazing fun. The Panzer 1C, which is also incredible fun. Two completely different little Tier 3 German light tanks. They're just tiny little bundles of fun. I mean, do they remind you of anything? Do they look very, very similar to one of my other favourite tanks in the game? The Luchs. Oh, they're like even smaller, cuter versions of the Luchs. So yeah, I've been having fun driving those. And we're going to be doing, I'll probably review them both together because there's not an awful lot to them. As well as, what else do we have? There we go. The Crusader. I think this is fantastic. I'll be putting a review of this one together as well. And while we're here on the Brits, the Matilda Black Prince. It's crap, but I love it. And the Cromwell, which is absolutely fantastic. So reviews of this, these are the sort of things you've got to look forward to in the future on the channel from World of Tanks content, as well as replays from the live streaming that I do with Quickie Baby. So there's loads and loads of World of Tanks content on the way. That brings us to the subject of today's garage review, which is the Tiger P. So, first of all, quick history lesson. Obviously, there were two competing designs for the Tiger. This was the Porsche design, and that, which we all know and love, was the Henschel design. Obviously, Henschel won. Why? What was wrong with the Porsche design? Well, it was a little bit too advanced for its own good. Ferdinand Porsche designed this thing based around an electric transmission. And it was a great idea, it just didn't work. The materials and the technology just weren't really there to do what he wanted to do with this electric transmission. And while it worked, it overheated a lot, and it was prone to, bursting into flames, which is generally considered a bad thing in a tank. Tanks that burst into flames are not considered, the optimal way to go. So, despite the fact that, the Tiger H, the Henschel Tiger, wasn't the most reliable design on the planet. It was needlessly complicated, but it was actually less complicated and more reliable than the Tiger P, and that's why Henschel won the contract, and Ferdinand Porsche was forced to recycle these Tiger P hulls as the Ferdinand Tank Destroyer, which is basically a Tiger P hull with a casement, a massive plug of armour on the top with a dirty great big gun. So the Tiger P did actually see the battlefield, although, as predicted, these things broke down more than they were knocked out by enemy fire. And it was all mostly because of that electric transmission. That was a great idea, it just didn't work. So what do we actually get in the game with the Tiger P? Because luckily for us, mechanical unreliability is not modelled in the game. So, well, 1450 hit points. It's Tier 7 heavy tank with a good wodge of health. Let's have a look at the Russians, for example, the IS. Yeah, 1230. The Americans with the T-29, which is a great tank, but still doesn't have as much health. But you'll note that what these things do have, even though they don't have the health of the Tigers, is they've got rounded and sloped armour. So the Tiger kind of needs that health. Well, certainly this thing needs that health because it's just a brick with armour plating on it. There's no angling or sloping going on there at all. Well, the Tiger P is equally just as, slab and like and monolithic. but it's got double the armour. 200 millimeters of armour at the front, 80 at the sides and rear, and the turret is more heavily armoured than the Tiger from Henschel as well. 120, it's 20%. It's 100% thicker at the front and 20% thicker at the front of the turret, with 120 at the front, 80 at the sides and rear. And this is where things start getting bizarre, because it's got double the armour of the Henschel Tiger. It weighs more. This thing weighs 62 tons. The Henschel Tiger only weighs 57 tons. So it's 5 tons heavier. It's got double the armour. The Henschel Tiger has an 870 horsepower engine. This thing only has a 670 horsepower engine. But this thing's 5 kilometres an hour faster. What the hell? Is that supposed to be Wargaming's way of modelling the electric transmission? It's the only possible explanation I can think of. Theoretical, below it, I need to add, this is a theoretical higher top speed of 35 kilometres per hour. This thing rarely actually sees that top speed. Technically, on paper, this thing is a kilometre per hour faster than the IS, but in practice, off-road, it's never going to reach that speed. The IS is, to all intents and purposes, despite having a slower top speed, it is a much more mobile tank than this thing. This thing also doesn't turn very well, but, German heavy tanks, you're going to get used to that. 22-degree traverse speed. It's actually slower than the Henschel Tiger, but only by 2 degrees. But the armour is just ridiculous. And if you zoom in and have a look, that frontal armour, 200 millimeters, bang. There you go, and you can see where the armour plates have just been riveted onto the front of this tank, and here as well. So that spot there, do not shoot at. This spot here, do not shoot at. Even though there are weak spots. There's a driver's view slit there, there's a machine gun port here, but look at the machine gun port. It's a tiny target, and it's surrounded by even more armour. The listed 200 millimeters of armour at the front of this thing is that there. And this here. But that bit around one of the frontal weak spots is even thicker. That's like 210 millimeters thick, possibly more, 220. So be real careful, even if you're aiming at alleged weak spots on the front of this thing, because they're tiny and they're surrounded by the heaviest armour on the tank. The front of the turret, again, 120 millimeters thick. Now, if you've got a gun that can get through 120 millimeters of armour and that gun mantlet, then by all means, if you're looking at one of these beasts from the front, shoot it in the front of the turret. If you don't know whether or not you can get through that frontal turret armour and the gun mantlet, and you're accurate enough, shoot at that commander's hatch on the top. Biggest weak spot in the whole tank. You'll penetrate it every time, and at close range, that is definitely where you want to be shooting this thing from the front. Forget about trying to go for weak spots. Forget about trying to hit angled lower glacis. Shoot it there. You'll penetrate and damage every single time. But the best place to be, the best thing to do if you're attacking this thing from the front, is to not be at the front and go around the sides, because the sides are only 80 millimeters thick. The rear is only 80 millimeters thick. And it's not very manoeuvrable. So you should easily be able, if you're getting close enough and hammered by this long 88mm gun, be able to get around the sides of this tank. Depends what you're driving, of course. Moving on, we have the turret traverse again, but really slow, 23 degrees per second. Good view range though, 370 metres, but we're at tier 7 now, we expect good view ranges on our heavy tanks. And very good signal range, 710 metres, so yeah. But one of the things about the Tiger P, and here's the thing, I mean, you compare it to the Henschel Tiger, and on paper, you look at these two tanks, and it's just, you would never, ever choose the Henschel Tiger over the Tiger P. It's just so much better in almost every category. It's got the same hit points. It is heavier. But despite being heavier and having a 200 horsepower weaker engine, it manages to get a 5 km per hour better top speed. It doesn't turn quite as quickly, but they both have slow turning times anyway. It's got double the armour on the hull. It's got 20% more armour on the turret, and they both have the same guns, and the same view range, and the same signal range. So the only thing you're losing by taking this thing is 2 degrees per second traverse speed. And you're a bit heavier, but a bit heavier If you can get up to 35 kilometers per hour going downhill in this thing, that extra weight is going to help you because you're going to be able to more effectively ram targets at the bottom of hills. So weighing more isn't even a downgrade. The only the only thing the Tiger H has over the Tiger P is 2 degrees per second faster hull traverse. In every other respect, the Tiger P is a better tank. In fact, it's so much better, I'm not even sure these two should be at the same tier. It is just absurdly good. I mean, you could take that thing, you could give that one of the 105mm German guns, and it would be a decent tier 8 heavy tank. That's how good the Tiger P is. So why do so many people play the Tiger H instead of the Tiger P? Well, to answer that question, you have to look at the research tree. Now, it's probably safe to say, first and foremost, that you see more people driving the Henschel Tiger than the Porsche Tiger because it's the Henschel Tiger. It's an utterly iconic, world-famous tank, and rightfully so. And it's probably one of the reasons why a lot of people drive tanks in this game, because they want to drive the Tiger. Certainly for me, it's why I started down the German tech tree back when I was young and stupid and didn't know any better. But aside from that, you've got to look at where these tanks lead. Now, the Henschel heavy tanks, well, from the Tiger, you get the Tiger 2, which again is one of the reasons why people start driving the German tanks. And the Tiger 2 is a good tank. And then from there you go to Tier 9 and the E75, which is absolutely fantastic. And the E75 leads to the E100, which isn't great, but it's arguably better than the Mouse, which is where you end up if you're going down the Tiger P route. And the Tiger P leads to the 4502As and the 4502Ps, and they're just not as well-known tanks. I'm not going to say they're worse than the Tiger 2 or the E75. I don't know. I've never driven either of them. But they're just not as well-known. They don't look as sexy, if you like, as the Tiger 2s and the E75s. And so I think that's probably why you see more people driving the Tiger, the Henschel version of the Tiger, instead of the Porsche version of the Tiger, even though the Porsche version of the Tiger is clearly superior in this game. But I've sat here for long enough now talking about what it's like to drive the Tiger P, and it's time I actually showed you what it's like to drive the Tiger P. So here's a couple of games I prepared earlier. So here's the first game that I played in the Tiger P when I rebought it, and it's a Tier 7 maximum encounter game on Muravanka, and I have to admit, I was a little worried when I saw the way the teams were deploying in this game, and saw the majority of our tanks and most of our heavies all rushing to camp in the forest, light their campfires and start toasting marshmallows and just waiting for the game to happen around them. But it turned out the team wasn't actually that bad. Now, I had high hopes for that 3001P up ahead of us. The 3001P is not a great tank, but it is very fast, and it does get an 88mm gun. And this guy, initially, he headed straight up for Sleepy Hollow up there, get himself into that low bit of ground in the hills, and spot anybody coming up trying to cap. And if you look at what's on our team, he's probably he or the Comet, the best tank to do that. Well, no idea where the Comet is, but the 3001P heads up to this really good spotting position. And it is a really, really good spotting position, as long as you don't fire your gun. Because as soon as you fire your gun, they know you're there, and you've got about 60mm of armour. And unfortunately, he just can't resist the temptation, so he's getting some early spots in. Don't do it. Don't shoot. Don't shoot. Don't do it. Resist the temptation. No, he fired. And then he died. So, and there's not a lot of people up here with me. We've got a TOG 2 lumbering away. An AMX M4 very wisely taking cover in the bushes back there. And I'm basically the scout. In my Tiger P, top tier heavy tank on the team, I'm having to scout. But I've got the armour for us at least. And now I've been spotted. Quickly put one into that IS, and here comes the return fire. 1, 2, 3. Now that was a Russian 122mm gun, but if you have a look at where they hit me, the only one that penetrated was the one that went through the commander's hatch. And you can see they're aiming for the driver's port there. but they're just not penetrating. Not with all the armour around it. And there. Now this 111, there is... that one might have been the VK3002 DB. I'm not sure what gun he has. He might be using the L70 75mm, but there is an M6 heavy tank down there with a 90mm gun, and that guy is good. And we don't spot him until much, much later on. But every time I get spotted, he's just sitting waiting. And he puts shot after shot right through that commander's hatch. And this is the thing about the Tiger P. It is monstrously well armoured from the front. But that commander's hatch on the top of the turret is a weak spot. And anybody who knows what they're doing will shoot you through that commander's hatch. And there's a bounce. And there, 212 damage. That's the M6. But we're all right now. The Tog's here. Now we can't lose. Oh, there he is. He's pointing his gun right at me, and I just miss him. But I haven't been spotted. So I move up. And of course, the second I fire, I'm spotted, and I take another bounce. They're all aiming for my commander's hatch, but none of them really have the accuracy to hit it reliably. But that M6 driver, there you go, 212 damage, that's the M6. But we got these guys now. The guys that went into the forest didn't camp the forest, they're pushing out through it. And this, I mean, the scores are only 6-4 to us. But we just had the better team. I'm going to have this BDR. There's my first actual kill. I think I hit that tiger. I'm not entirely sure. But if I don't know where he is, I'm not going to waste a shot, just in case. Especially not when I know... Oh, missed. Typical. And then I get spotted and bang, there's that M6 is literally, he's just sitting there with his gun pointing at the top of this hill, waiting for me to get spotted. And he puts another one into me, and I really should... I mean, I hung around to get the kill on this 361H, and then he finishes me off. So, well played to that M6 driver. I can't really complain about that. And he did a good... You know, he played a good game. But his team just weren't good enough. You know, they've lost everybody other than artillery, the 2 tanks in the cap circle, and that's it. But this is quite funny. We haven't spotted the M6 again yet. This IS is about to move forward, and bang, there he is. Now, watch this comet. Look at him. 572 health. Charge! He nearly kills himself. Luckily, he's saved by the IS driver. And unfortunately, the Tog didn't survive. Oh no. So that was the first game that I played in the Tiger P after rebuying it, and it wasn't too bad. And it certainly illustrated the way the armour on this thing works. Every single shot that was fired at the front of this tank that didn't hit the commander's hatch just bounced off. Even aiming at the driver's viewport, unless you smack it direct, unless you hit it straight on, all you're going to do is hit 200mm of armour all around it. The machine gun port is even worse. Technically it's a weak spot, but it's a tiny little weak spot, and it's got even thicker armour. There's an extra armour plate bolted on around it on top of the 200mm of frontal armour. So very, very, very tough tank, but not without its drawbacks. Because if you come across anybody who knows what they're doing, it's kind of like driving the Super Pershing. Anybody who knows where the weak spots are will kill you if you let them. And I just let. I could have done that better. That M6 can't argue with the way that M6 driver played. Where is he? There you go. Yeah. Well played. Didn't deserve the team he got. He killed me, and he totally deserved that kill. So well done to him. So we've seen what the Tiger P's like when it's top tier, and it's a pretty, it's a beast of a tank when it's top tier. How about when you're sitting right at the bottom end of the feeding chain, as I am here? This is a tier 9 match on Abbey. What do they have? An E50? Oof, yeah, he can penetrate my gun mantlet. A T30? Yeah, he can penetrate my gun mantlet. An AMX 5100? Yeah, every single one of these guys can put holes right through the front of my turret. T34? Yeah, the tier 8s, the penetration on the T34's gun is monstrous. In fact, these guys can put holes right through the front of my hull armour. So you cannot rely on your armour in a match like this. There's lots of tier 8s, and almost all of the tier 9s will just laugh at the 200mm of frontal armour on this thing. So effective angling and being sneaky are going to be what help you survive in a game like this. That and having a decent team. Now this is dodgy. There's myself, a Super Pershing, and a T-34. Oh, and there's another Super Pershing following up the rear. So we got a combination. I mean, we're all pretty slow here, but we're all either well armoured or we've got really good guns. So this is going to depend on what we run into when we come around this corner. And the spread of the team, it doesn't look that bad, actually. I mean, I've seen worse. There's no obvious lemming trains going on here. So we've got Super Pershing going high. I'm going to go low. It's important that you don't all head the same way when you come around here, otherwise you end up getting outflanked and encircled, and tanks that get outflanked and encircled are dead tanks. Sixth Sense not going off. If there's anything over there, he has not spotted me. And given the view ranges of tanks at this sort of level, that probably means that there is nobody over there. So, only one artillery, but let's not make it easy. Hug the side of the wall, which also gives you more cover from anybody who's lurking around that corner. Obviously, if you drive wide, they'll spot you sooner. And there we go, there's an FCM-50T and an AMX-50-100 up there, so that's alright. French tanks, I can penetrate them with no problems. And, oh, an ELC. Thank you. And there's a, well, it's not a bounce. ELC fires, hits my tracks. Doesn't do enough damage to blow the tracks off. And sayonara, sucker. I was unlucky for the AMX. He really did not need us to be coming around the corner there. T-34 puts one in at the FCM-50. I don't have a second shot. I'm not going to reload in time. Actually, I did hit him, but I'm not going to reload in time to hit the AMX-50-100. Now, the Super Pershing's got the armour to face off against those guys. I don't. So instead of chasing them up there, because, one, they're French. Even driving backwards, they're faster than me. So I'm on a decent stretch of ground here. I can do 30 kilometers per hour on this kind of terrain. So I'm going to go around, try to cut them off as they retreat. And we haven't actually lost anybody yet. This is good news. And look at the map. I mean, they've got two guys pushing through the middle, but they're running right into heavies and tank destroyers, so they're probably not going to live. And we totally outflanked. We've boxed the entire enemy team up into... And there they go, that Black Prince they're trying to push through has just died. And we've boxed the entire enemy team up into 1/4 of the map. So this is actually pretty damn good. However, they've got some big old tank destroyers. Side of the turret of a Super Pershing I will shoot at any day of the week. And I've been spotted. And they do have some big old tank destroyers. And I ain't interested in taking hits from them. I'll let the T-34 go ahead and do that. And I don't have a very good shot at him, so I ain't going to waste it. And there's an ISU-152. Don't know which way these guys' guns are pointing, so I'm going to power forward. I've been spotted. There's a Ferdinand and an ISU up there. Fire on the move. Don't care if it misses or hits. Just take the shot. Get forward, get under their gun depression, get into cover. And they just annihilated that T-34, who stopped in the middle of the field to shoot at them. Ugh. Now, this is the tricky part. The ISU is not pointing his gun at me, but I am going to take hits as I come over the top here, because I can't get my gun down. Oh, and there go my tracks. And I missed the ISU. Crap. I'm angled quite well against the FCM-50. But I need to kill him. Oh, and it bounces. Oh, the front armour of these things is so troll. However, his side armour I will penetrate any day of the week. Oh, and I've got the back of a Super Pershing. Yeah, I'll have you as well. Oh, he didn't. He turned. He even made it easier for me. Well, he had an E50 in front of him. He was screwed. He can angle his armour against the E50, and then I'll just shoot him from the rear, or he can turn around and face me. Yeah, he was screwed no matter what. Now, we're only winning 10-8, and there's a strong force of enemy tanks just disappeared on the map, but they're heading down Heavy Tank Road over on the 8 line. But they're too far away to be able to get back here and reset if we both cap, and the temptation is strong to go after that S51, but we have a medium tank up there, 3002 DB. You can see this E50 driver's thinking about it. Don't do it. Don't do it. But he spots. He's smart enough to know that the 3002 DB is going to kill that artillery. And the artillery doesn't know we're here. And there you go. Actually, it was counter-battery artillery fire that finished him off. And now we've got a Super Pershing coming up here. And this is good. The Super Pershing is outside of the capture circle, so that T-34 can shoot the Super Pershing all he likes. He's not going to reset the cap. Oh, I've been spotted. Oh, they're desperate. Some of them are... But it's all their slow tanks that are coming back. Their E50 is still fighting it out in our end of the capture circle, and yeah, we've got it. So 3 kills in a tier 7 heavy tank in a tier 9 game. Play this thing intelligently. You know, I mean, you can say that of any tank. Play any tank intelligently and you will do well. And I mean, I'm not trying to cover myself in glory here. I didn't win the game for our team, but I certainly contributed, and you definitely can. Played intelligently, a Tiger P, even in a tier 9 match, you can help swing the tide of battle. The armour is good enough, and the gun isn't bad. It's a great tank. I really, really like it. I just wish it didn't lead to the mouse. That's the only real problem I have. And there's the reason why I got rid of the Tiger P. Because I needed money to buy, I think it was to buy an E100, and that was a massive disappointment. And there was no way I was going to sell my Henschel Tiger, because it's the Tiger, and I needed something that was worth a fair amount of cash, and I wasn't really interested in grinding any further, and that ended up being this thing. But now I've got it back. And here's the thing about the Tiger P, if you've invested as heavily in the German tank line as I have, when you get the Tiger P, and when I rebought it, you can see how much XP I could right now straight away go ahead and get the 4502A with the free XP that I've got and the 56,000 XP I have on the Tiger P. And I've already unlocked everything on the 4502A except for the tracks and the turret, and the same with the 4502P. All of this stuff here, you'll see I have already unlocked. There we go, look at the guns, and I've got them from the E75s. And if you go to the engines, because I've got the Ferdinand, I've got the Porsche engines as well. So it's going to be a really, really easy grind to get to the 4502A and the 4502P, purely because of how much I've already invested in the German heavy tank line, which is nice. Ferdinand Porsche's competing design for the Tiger, while it was a failure in real life, the game doesn't model mechanical reliability, and so it's an absolute beast of a tier 7 heavy. And I'm always going on about tier 7 heavies and saying T29's best tier 7 heavy tank in the game, but I'm always forgetting about the Tiger P, and I think the Tiger P is as good as the T29. It is better than the Henschel Tiger in nearly every respect, and as I said earlier on in the review, I think the only reason people don't get it is because it's not the Henschel Tiger. It's not the tank. And it leads to the mouse, which is not a very popular vehicle, and it's certainly nowhere as good as it was prior to the introduction of the American tanks with their monster penetration at tier 9 and 10. But don't let the fact that this thing leads to 2 relatively unknown tanks like the 4502A and P put you off. The fact that this thing doesn't lead to a legend like the Tiger II or the downright sexiness of the E75. Don't let that dissuade you. This is a great tank, and it's far superior to the Henschel Tiger. As I said earlier, you could take one of the Tiger II's 105mm guns, slap it on the front of this thing, and this thing would be a decent tier 8 heavy. It is that good, and it's so much better than the more famous Henschel Tiger. So Ferdinand Porsche's version of the tier 7 Tiger tank gets a definite thumbs up from me. It's a great tank. You will not be sorry if you get it. As always, folks, take care on that battlefield, and if you're really lucky, I won't catch you next time. Take care.